Hi guys, Asmo here, and in this video I'm gonna go over the balance manifesto for POE in Siege of the Atlas. We're gonna go through all of the buffs, nerfs, and discuss what can we expect in the new league based on all of these changes. So first of all, we see here a player balance hit-based spellcasting. This means that basically self-casting when you're not using totems, traps, mines, and trigger skills and stuff like that. These spells, like just basically you wanted to make a character that casted Arc, or you wanted to make a character that casted Fireball or Frost Nova, like any type of just basic spell. It was at a big disadvantage because you could use less of multipliers. You had the disadvantages of like not being able to have the skill just keep being casted by totems while you're running. You couldn't stack it like with mines. You couldn't trigger it with something to just bypass the cast speed and have like massively inflated cast speed. Same with like traps, right? So these things have big advantages. Same with damage over time. You can just put a dot on something and then run around. That's why just basic casting is at a much bigger disadvantage. So in order to account for that, what they're doing is they're buffing the existing spells, like majority of the spells that were basically used could be used for self-casting that don't count for any of those categories. They're buffing them between like 45 to 60% more damage, which is actually a massive buff. It's a huge buff, and it will feel very nice while leveling, for example, because it will be at the beginning, like level 1, the skills will have very similar damage to before, or the same even, but by level 20 they will get more and more and more. So as you're getting into maps, as you're leveling the gems, you're getting huge benefit for leveling these as it should be, and it's going to even out a little bit the balance between the amount of damage you can get from like cast on crit or mines or traps, and same with like damage over time versus like just regular spell casting. So this is, I think, a really cool change. It makes it better for like very basic builds, which means basically like newer players, people who just picked up the game and wanna get into maps, and their damage is shit because they're not abusing any of those mechanics. Now it's gonna be similar damage to as if they were abusing those mechanics, so it's gonna be more of a choice whether you prefer to play this way or prefer to play that way. Makes it more viable. I definitely like this change. It's a change that people have been asking for a long time, and also some people are saying that, well, the issue with the self-casting is the fact that you don't have mobility because you have to just stand there and cast spells, and this is just damage. Just damage will not solve it. And my answer to that is like, actually damage will solve it, because that means you will be doing more damage for less casting. Like it literally is the solution, right? Like you cannot magically make it so that you can run while casting. However, you can compensate for that by having a little bit more damage, right? And that means that, let's say, over a minute of or in like a 1 minute long fight, let's say you're doing like an end game boss and you're fighting for 1 minute, you're gonna have less uptime as a self-casting build, but you're gonna be able to do more damage in those little windows, which makes sense, right? It makes sense, and also it's like an indirect buff to ignite because of the base damage being higher, benefiting ignite so much, because it's not like a dot skill, right? It's not a damage over time skill. Let's say you're using Arc or something, right, for the ignite, but they will nerf ignite to compensate for that, right? So they're nerfing traps, totems, mines, like custom crit, I think, different support gems like that, but they're buffing the skills that were used with them. So that means if you were playing these totem, trap, mine, triggered skills and so on, you will have roughly the same damage. Like they didn't want to nerf those things. They think that's cool, that this is strong, but they basically essentially just buff the self-casting. Plus there will be some unintended use, like unintended buffs that will come out of this, but they will just see that what comes up and nerf it next patch. But this is really good. I really love this change. They also add more cast speed on items, for example on rings and on runic daggers, so this is something that you definitely want to look out for. Self-casting definitely with runic daggers with like some crit and cast speed on these weapons early on, maybe like +1 or +2 to the skill level, which is gonna benefit you even more now, is gonna be really strong. So there will definitely be some cool builds like that. Orb of Storms, will be changed. We'll see what's gonna happen, but it's supposed to be redesigned, so we'll see. Maybe we'll see if it's still gonna be really good for leveling or not. And then there are some improvements for lightning tendrils, ice spear, and flame blast against a single target. So I'm guessing it's gonna be something like the less, like the fewer targets you hit, the more damage you do, for example, with Flame Blast, or maybe with Lightning Tendrils as well. Lightning Tendrils could get similar treatment to something like, for example, what's it called? The Galvanic Arrow, where you do like an AoE and then you also single target something on top of that, so you kind of do like double damage single target. So that's really, really cool. Improved many skills that rely heavily on the unique threshold jewels to enhance their damage and remove or change these jewels. This is kind of cool because these skills were sort of at a disadvantage because you had to use these threshold jewels. We don't have full information on this yet, so people who are complaining about, well, Glacial Hammer was nerfed, right, or something like that, we don't see the changes yet. It will probably receive like damage buffs or some mechanical buffs to the skill that will compensate for that. I don't think they're just gonna skip over that, and if they will, then they will fix it later. Lower the power of Unleash support. This is basically Unleash kind of solves this issue of having to stand and cast, because instead of casting continuously, you can kind of stockpile your casts, save them up, and then unleash them at one time. So they're nerfing this because that would make the self-casting just way too powerful with the damage buffs that they're giving it. And then the lowering the damage of the trap mine trigger effect, like I talked about already, and lowering the ignite, just because the skills that will be using ignite, like different specific spells, were buffed, right? And here is the list of all of the skills that have been buffed. So we've got like, oh yeah, there's Glacial Hammer. Where is it? Glacial, oh no, that's Glacial Cascade. No Glacial Hammer here, but I'm sure there will be more because they say that this is not, this is like a selection of some of the skills that have been updated. So we get Absolution buff, Arc buff, Bladeful, Blazing Salvo. Blazing Salvo buff, depending on the damage, what is this? 55. Oh, that's actually that's a massive buff to Blazing Salvo. Like the damage effectiveness, Blazing Salvo Minor might be even stronger now, because if it's supposed to be around the same, but the damage effectiveness increases, there are ways to boost this. 300, we're up to 361 from. That's a massive buff. If they nerf traps, where are the mines? Multiple traps, cluster traps. Where are the mines? Blast Chain Mine, 59. So this is 19% less. This is 20% less. Okay, so 20% less damage, but we're getting a bigger buff than 20%. So I think Blazing Salvo Mines are gonna be back on the menu again. Blazing Salvo Mine is a very comfy skill, very, very powerful, and with these numbers, it seems like it's actually pretty strongly buffed, especially if you like abuse the added damage effectiveness, because it has this is per projectile, which means it has like an insane added damage effectiveness now. Like do that like times 7 or something. What else do we have? Divine Ire. So Divine Ire has been buffed, now deals 110 more damage per stage. I like these like added damage effectiveness buffs to these things. Fireball also buffed by, wow, that's a massive amount of damage added to Fireball. Firestorm buffed by actually not as much as I thought. It's a very underused skill. Could be buffed probably by more. Well, it has a lot of added damage, so maybe. What else do we have from interesting skills that I would like to use? What about Ice Spear? So Ice Spear has received, oh, that's a lot of added damage. And then we've got, okay, it's not, well, it's big, but it's not insane. Is there something for custom crit? What's the custom crit? Awaken custom crit, 9% less instead of 30% more. That's massive. That's massive. So this is like 40% less damage But the skills received more damage as well, right? So it's interesting, but big nerf to custom crit. Well, it's a deserved nerf for sure. Custom crit is very, very powerful, super popular all the time, super easy build to play. Okay, anything interesting? Voltaxic, I want to make a Voltaxic burst. Added damage effect. Oh, that's actually interesting. Can stack so much added lightning. Okay, 600, 1000, 1160. That's a pretty big buff. Unfortunately, Voltaxic Burst was something that I wanted to play with custom crit. And now that custom crit is nerfed so much, this does not compensate for that. So it's still gonna be shit. Okay. Added damage effectiveness 50% more to unearth. This is still really bad. This is still too low damage for this to work. Okay, what else do we have here? We've got Nerfs to the Soul Mantle. No longer has +1 to totems. This was a super powerful unique that was basically mandatory for totem builds. So on one hand, it's kind of good that they're making it so that it's not just like the most powerful item that always has to be played in that specific build. So this is a reasonable nerf. Poet Spend, Cost Priest, Malice, Mjolnir have had their cooldown on triggering secret spells increased to 0.25. That's big. That's kind of big. That's a big nerf to Cost Priest and Mjolnir. Mjolnir was strong last league. Cost Priest was always strong. So this is deserved for those. Poet Spend was not that popular. But they're normalizing it, so it makes sense as well. It was still strong. Just because it wasn't popular doesn't mean it wasn't strong. Here are some buffs that have been made to dedicate totem and trap skills. So this is basically because they were buffing spells but nerfing totem supports and stuff like that. They're buffing these things because they're basically just spells, right? Just because they say trap doesn't mean it's not a spell. It's just a simple spell. They're buffing them just like the other ones. So like for example, Holy Flame Totem, Lightning Trap. Wait a minute, they're buffing Ice Trap? Wow. That's a lot of added damage effectiveness. That's not... What? That's 90% more? 1, 2, 3... Wow. Wow. What are the traps? Trap nerf? Cluster traps? See, that's... What? That's only... 5? That's only 6% less damage? 55, 36, okay, that's like 19. So 19% less damage. Multiple traps. I mean, we'll find a different way of doing it. We'll find a different way of doing it, maybe. Well, actually, Ice Trap is already like kind of limited. Has very few options for trap supports. So this is 19 damage. For cluster or like multiple traps, 19 less. But this is a massive buff. Like this still is, I think, gonna end up as a buff to Ice Trap, which is already very, very strong. Definitely strong starter. I think Ice Trap is gonna be probably a strong starter as well. I might wanna write starters like that I think are gonna be decent. So we can do like Ice Trap. We can do Blazing Salvo Mines. We can do Poison Concoction. I know that these are going to be really strong for sure. But we'll see what other things jump out at me from these things. Probably Fireball. Probably Fireball. Some kind of Fireball. I think. I mean, this is a massive amount of damage. Some kind of Fireball. Some kind of Fireball is going to be definitely a good starter. What else do we have here? Unleash changes, cast speed modifier changes. It is now possible to generate increased cast speed modifiers on runic daggers. That's pretty cool. More like better cast, like a lot of cast speed mods have been buffed. That's pretty good. This is actually gonna, unironically, it's gonna unnerf the what's it called? The brand, right? The Penance brand. It's gonna unnerf Penance brand a little bit because you're gonna get a little bit more cast speed, which was definitely very needed. Unique threshold jewels is now limited to 1, previously 2. Could you have 2? Huh, I didn't even know you could have 2. Existing items can be updated, blah, blah, blah. So, Blight has reduced cast speed. Wait a minute. What is does that mean you just have 30% more cast speed? No, reduced cast. No, I don't understand. What? Reduced cast speed, which means less cast speed, right? Which means you cast it faster. So more cast speed. Such a weird wording. Instead of the hinder duration. Well, that's just faster. That makes it faster to stack, which makes it less clunky, which makes it so that you can like tap and go more often. That makes Blight better. That's pretty cool. Freezing pulse. Freezing pulse. Wow. That's an insane... Like freezing pulse, unironically... Wow, 130... Holy fuck. Yo, everybody, dude, this is the return of the old school Kriparian build. You guys remember the old school Kriparian build with the... What was this staff? He was running with making like a marauder with calms, like shocking people with freezing pulse and shit like that. This is just insane amount of damage. I see Kriparian coming back next league and just playing freezing pulse. Spark now deals this much damage and now fires 4 additional projectiles at level 1 up to 7. Okay, it's definitely a buff to Spark. It's interesting. So with this damage effectiveness change, actually like characters that were playing as a duo with an aura bot are gonna be buffed because you get a bunch of added damage from different sources, from auras and stuff like that, and this is gonna actually help you a lot for the Spark. So that's interesting. Ground Slam, more to radius, cleave. These are like, oh yeah, Glacial Hammer now has 100% fist converted to gold at all gem levels, previously 60. Viper Strike now deals 90% of base attack damage unchanged, up to 140, previously 105, 90 effective for that damage, up to 140. That's a very tiny buff to Viper Strike, but that's cool. Viper Strike is not too powerful. It was already definitely viable. Like I played Viper Strike Radar, and it was one of the most fun builds I played. It was very, very strong. Had great clear actually, not so good single target. So just like a basic damage nerf is pretty good for it. Ethereal Knives, unchanged level 1, and then oh, 9 additional projectiles to 12, previously 9, so 3 more projectiles and 100% more effectiveness of added damage. Oh boy. So this basically means an Eternity Shroud EK build is being buffed. So Eternity Shroud EK build is being buffed here. They are changing the Hydrosphere, but there was nothing about Tornado. Tornado is a decent single target boost for Ethereal Knives, because you just plant the Tornado and you shoot the Tornado and the projectiles are gonna do extra damage, so you're actually benefiting from the extra projectiles on single target. So Ethereal Knives buffs, I always welcome. It's my favorite skill in the game. I like EK a lot, and this is really cool to see because it definitely was underperforming outside of just aura stacking. And then Blight buffed. It's very interesting. Blight is gonna be very powerful as well. Definitely strong contender for, like, if you can also like abuse Val Blight, this is gonna be really cool as well. Okay, what do we have here? Anomalous, reduced damage, some divergent, increased AoE, increased angle. Okay, this is not very impactful, I think. Orb of Storms redesigned as a single target tool for lightning casters. The focus of the skill has been placed on its mechanic of hitting enemies when you cast a lightning skill in its area. Orb of Storm now deals 3 to 8. That's more damage at level 1 already. Some more damage. So stronger for leveling. Orb of Storm is stronger for leveling. Now strikes every 3.5 seconds at gem per 5. And every blah blah blah. So on its own it deals less damage without triggering it. Beams now split towards 1 additional target at level 1. Previously 2. So up to 3. Okay, so it splits to less targets. So it's worse for clear. Effectiveness of added damage more. Oh, but it's okay, so it's gonna be more. So you're not gonna be using it for clear as much while leveling, but you are gonna be using it for single target. It's much stronger for single target, especially like the effectiveness of added damage is really powerful with the early wand crafts and stuff like that. Base duration 7 seconds, that also helps for single target. No longer requires splitting from the caster when they lightning spell will zap an enemy in range every time you cast lightning spell within the orb area, making positioning more possible. Okay, yeah, this is interesting. So this is cool. It's worse for clear now, but it is actually significantly better for single target. So this means that you probably have to find something else to clear. Maybe you will just focus on Frost Bomb more while leveling, but this will be still very, very powerful for single target with Stormblast Mine and stuff like that. Ignite compensation changes. So we know that they are nerfing the Ignite, so they're buffing skills with that use Ignite normally. That's cool. Hit-based bow builds. That's another big change in this patch that I really like. Basically, if you just wanted to do like lightning arrow or ice shot or whatever build, you needed either an aura bot with you or you needed big investment, right? Or you go like still big investment, but you go like clear low tier maps and go MF, right? With stuff like that. But you still wanted to invest a lot. Like you need a lot of added damage and stuff like that. So instead of requiring that extra added damage, they're giving that extra added damage to bows locally. So you get more damage on your bows, like elemental bows are gonna be providing you with more damage, improving mastery on the bows. Okay, the bow masteries were actually not that bad. There was like a lot of cool stuff for clear speed. Quiver progression reworked. Greatly improved added physical damage modifiers on quivers. That's actually pretty strong. That's very nice. That's gonna help like just trying to play Tornado Shot. Tornado Shot Poison might be stronger because of this. I think actually it will be. We have replaced elemental damage with attack skills modifiers on quivers with increased damage with bow skills to allow quivers to roll another way to improve skills in physical and chaos damage. Oh, okay. So if you're doing physical like Tornado Shot, or if you're doing like a bleed bow or poison, then you're going to be able to just have increased damage modifier instead of like LA damage. So this thing will apply to both LA damage. Actually, quiver crafting, like if you want to make money next league, maybe quiver crafting could be a good way to do it, because you're gonna be able to hit quivers for so many builds at the same time, because you're not gonna be hitting like elemental damage or like chaos dot or whatever, or like damage over time modifiers. You're just gonna be hitting the increased damage plus maybe like crit or maybe like attack speed or something, and flat damage, right? Like flat physical damage with conversion skills. It will help poison, it will help bleed, it will help elemental, it will help physical with impale, even stuff like that, champion tornado shot or whatever. So this is a really cool change. It's gonna make gearing a little bit more flexible and easier to attain for players, I guess. +1 arrow will now be on all quivers. That means you can fracture it. It's, again, bro, people are gonna be crafting quivers. Like crafting quivers is gonna be a thing to make money next league, I guess, if bow builds are popular. But because they're buffing them, they should be decently popular. Like a lot of people are probably gonna be playing the tornado shot poison. People are gonna be playing bleed maybe as well. Maybe, I don't know if they care about the actual damage they get on quivers. Probably not for corrupting fever, but still pretty good. Different specific changes. So you can get up to like 50% increased damage with both skills on a quiver modifier. That's a pretty strong modifier. Just to get it on its own, that's like a whole wheel of that's like a 3 passive wheel on a passive skill tree. It's pretty strong. Essence of Woe no longer roll increased elemental damage with attack skills. Instead, they roll increased damage with both skills. Okay, so you can... Huh. That's gonna be so easy to craft nice quivers. That's very, very nice. What else do we have? Quivers no longer share the same modifier progression for added physical damage to attacks as those on amulets. They now have their own line of modifiers with increased values. So the added fizz damage to attacks on quivers is going to be stronger than on amulets. Basically just a lot more damage for the bows. Just generic damage for the bows. What are the new masteries? Let's see. Increases in reduction to arrow speed also apply to damage with bows. That is nice quality of life for a build like Galvanic Arrow, for example, because arrow speed or like or is it arrows? Is it only arrow speed or projectile speed? That's what I want to know. Because if it's arrow speed, that's a fucking niche modifier. But if it's projectile speed, then you can find that in a lot of places. Arrow speed, I guess it's like a very niche modifier. Plus 100 to accuracy rating per green socket on your bow. That is insane. What the fuck? Why do you get 600 accuracy rating? Like most gems on your bow skills are gonna be green. So let's say you get like 5, so 500 accuracy rate. That's insane. Like for accuracy stacking, that's actually what? Why is this so insane? That's so strong. What the fuck? That's like way too powerful. Holy shit. That's so insanely powerful. Increased Mirage Archer duration. I don't know if that's really strong. Like, who cares about Mirage Archer duration? Like, you're gonna attack often enough to trigger it again. I don't know if that's good. Blink Arrow and Mirror Arrow cooldown recovery rate. That could help the Blink Arrow / Mirror Arrow builds that actually do damage with those. For travel, I don't know if that's that important, since those builds, like bow builds, usually have very high movement speed and you'd rather just run than use these skills. New quivers, so we're getting a little bit of a change up in the quivers. So let's see, previous versions of the quiver base type no longer drop. This is the new set of quiver base type, so completely new quivers. So old quivers, forget everything you know about quivers. They're redoing quivers. Serrated 1 to 4 fizz damage to bow attacks. That's really good. That this is the thing that we have early on. Added fire damage, life gain. So okay, for the first like 20 levels, you're actually getting useful quivers. You're not getting like accuracy that you don't need or shit like that. So this is actually really good. Arrow speed, pierce. So pierce from 25. Added fizz, global accuracy is happening later when you actually start needing it. That's really good. Crit chance, added fire, attack speed, fizz damage as extra chaos. That's a lot of fizz as extra chaos. That's so powerful for the poison tornado shot. What? Bro, the poison tornado shot build is getting so many buffs. It's actually crazy. I think what's his name? Firegrass. Firegrass is it's the beginning of the Firegrass redemption arc. Poison tornado shot. Maybe. Is this the time? I mean, it's gonna be really strong. The question is it gonna be stronger during leveling? I think it will be still stronger during leveling. So Firegrass, figure out a good leveling for this shit, and it's gonna be a really strong starter. What else do we have? Added fizz damage to bow attacks, increased elemental damage. Very nice. Unique quivers will be reassigned. That is very nice as well. I like the change. Definitely makes more sense than it was before, being like very random. Plus there are some actual powerful options to go for, rather than being super uninfluential minor choice, while for example crafting quivers. What else do we have? Sources of added damage. Added cold, lightning, chaos damage. Cold, lightning, chaos. So no... so no added fire, because it's not flat. But here's what they're not talking about. They're not talking about where the hell is it? Immolate? Oh yeah, Immolate. Immolate is a really powerful one. Immolate support with the new damage effectiveness of the Blazing Salvo. That's gonna be really powerful. Immolate with Blazing Salvo. Also with Armageddon Brand. Immolate with Armageddon Brand, because they're not nerfing the fire one, right? So added Chaos is nerfed to super powerful. Awakened added Chaos is nerf. I hope they're not changing the +1 to gems. Added Cold, Awakened added Cold, added Lightning, Awakened added Lightning. Okay. And then locally they're adding more damage. So you're gonna be able to get more on weapons, which is fine. Spell added damage weapon mods. They increased them as well. I wonder if that means the Wandcraft will be, probably not affecting the Wandcraft. But so the added sources of added fire damage, also like Anger Aura, because of these oh my god, yeah, because of these damage effectiveness, damage effectiveness on so many skills was buffed like crazy. So certain skills received up to like 130% more added damage effectiveness. That means that they had to nerf this, but they're not nerfing the fire ones. Like for example, the Immolate or the Anger Aura. The Anger Aura was already like super like undervalued, underplayed. It was like underpowered, so to speak, compared to the something like Hatred. So this is actually really, really interesting. So that's gonna be very, very powerful because of the changes to the damage effectiveness. This is definitely like, I don't know, they're making it more balanced, I guess, but that means the fire added damage is gonna be really strong. Interactions with Hydrosphere. Oh, Hydrosphere nerfed. Oh, rip. Fucking, what's it called? Cobra Lash? No? Is Cobra Lash gonna be okay? I guess Tornado is still there. I guess you still have Tornado. Plus this does a little bit. But like the shotgunning with chaining from Hydrosphere and Tornado with Cobra Lash was insane. And for other things as well. Like stuff with chain, with Hydrosphere was very, very powerful. But they're nerfing that interaction, which is fine. Hydrosphere is like a cool skill on its own. It doesn't need this interaction to be like a viable option for different builds. So that's fine. Triggering marks. So this is interesting. They're changing it so that marks are now permanent. You cast a mark on a boss and you have it forever on that boss. I'm sure there are going to be bugs where the boss like zones in and out or gets like an immunity phase and loses the mark or something and you have to recast it. That's fine, but this is really interesting change and it's gonna make it just better for single target, right? Marks are gonna be more powerful for single target and they're gonna be also worse for clear. But actually with the changes for something like Deadeye is gonna be interesting because whenever you kill someone, the mark transfers to another enemy, right? So Deadeye is gonna be able to use the marks for clear, and also they're adding a new gem, Mark on Hit, so trigger supported mark skill when you hit a rare or unique enemy with an attack. So this is gonna be something that definitely as a Deadeye you will want to use because this will help your clear. It will just transfer between these. It will also transfer to yeah, it's gonna be so comfy to do because you're gonna be basically skipping the ring. You don't need the ring now. Marks are now permanent. They don't have the duration tag. That's totally fine. I feel like this is making it, narrowing it down. What are you supposed to use the marks for? But making it stronger for that and actually more comfortable to use, which is nice. Like we are already heading into the direction of using multiple different skills while fighting bosses, not just like spamming one button for many builds. So having to press a button less, and that means you don't have to abuse certain like trigger mechanics or rings and stuff like that. You can actually just cast it on the boss. You can actually have like supports that make it stronger instead of having it in some kind of a trigger. Like when you look at something like Sniper's Mark, for example, it scales extremely well with the quality. Basically quality gives it more damage, so you can run something like Enhance instead of having it somewhere where it has to be triggered and you're losing gem sockets, right? So this is a very cool change. I think it makes it just easier to use and ease of use, and being able to focus on just the encounter is definitely really, really cool. Fortification damage reduction. This is a change that basically is making it so if the boss just spawned and has like a big damage reduction, you're gonna be doing less damage to it. Therefore, you're gonna be getting less fortify, and that could cause you to just get one shot immediately because the mechanic you relied on defensively didn't work properly because of other mechanic, right? So this is making it so the damage reduction on the boss will not affect the fortify. Instead, the fortify will be based on the damage you would have dealt before the mitigation, right? So that's making it more fair, making it more consistent, and yeah, fortify ignores the target's damage reduction. That is actually a cool way to change it, make it more consistent and reliable for melee skills, and in certain situations it will save a lot of people, I'm sure. That's really cool. Detonate Dead, the change to Detonate Dead is actually not so much of a nerf as more of a like it's normalizing things, right? So first of all, Ignite was nerfed, so that's one way they're nerfing this, and secondly, they're making it so that you got 15% chance to spawn a Spectre corpse per corpse, right, of the desecration. So this is gonna still give you a good amount of damage from bringing the Spectres with you, but it's not gonna be like super powerful in one zone and super low in another zone, right? So for example, if you're in some kind of a zone where there are no like endemic monsters that would be spawning corpses, you're just gonna get like skeletons or some shit, right? Like you get in your hideout or whatever. So this is basically making it so the damage is normalized between zones instead of being like super bursty in some encounters like the invitations or whatever, right? So I think this is definitely a good step in the right direction to like normalize the skill. I think the skill is still gonna be very powerful unless they do some numeric changes to the scaling of it, and I think they should, because the Ignite nerf and this normalizing of the damage is probably not gonna be enough to nerf the build enough to the point where it's not gonna be like super strong. I think it's still gonna be super strong. I think Detonate Dead is Ignite is still gonna be powerful. Seismic Trap, so this is basically a change that makes it so that, what is it? Seismic Trap has very high damage scaling as its damage scales with increases to AoE. Increasing the area of Seismic Trap impacts greatly increases the chance of multiple large bursts hitting a target, as area increases don't affect the area where the impacts can occur. Though this mechanic is interesting, it provides far too much damage for the investment cost, and the damage of the skill would have to be lowered by so much to offset this that the skill will be very weak without the overlapping mechanic. Make modifiers to AoE applied to the Seismic Trap bursts can target at a ratio. This will slightly improve the area coverage of the skill while lowering the damage growth from increases to AoE without removing their damage benefit entirely. I don't really understand this change that much. They're nerfing it, but I'm not sure how exactly it will work. So make modifiers to AoE apply to the area of Seismic Traps. To the area of Seismic Traps bursts can target at a ratio. What's the ratio? So that means you're gonna get more AoE and less damage from what I can gather, like just more AoE, less damage. It's still gonna be probably strong. Like we don't see the numbers. It's really hard to like, what's the fucking ratio? What does that mean? It's really hard for me to judge this by now, but I think it might still be playable. Toxic Rain has a very strong damage over time, and low build cost compared to other builds. Yep, it also benefits from some other quiver and mastery changes made to improve hit-based bow builds. That's actually true. Reduce level to partially negate the improvements and bring it in line with other skills. So 7 unchanged. So, okay. So this is like 50 damage less, roughly. That's like 20% nerf or so. It's still gonna be viable, but it's no longer the go-to starter. I think that makes it no longer like the go-to starter. The go-to starter now, like if you were someone who liked Toxic Rain, you like the versatility of it, you like the fact that it can do all map mods, you like the fact that it could be really fast at clear speed while also being able to do all the bosses. you like the sustain, you like the flasks and the speed. If you liked that about the build, just play Poison Concoction now. I'm gonna make a video about Poison Concoction because I think this is gonna be my starter for the next league, especially Pathfinder. It's very, very powerful. It's extremely fast. Despite me not being really good at the build, I practiced like 3 times and I cleared the acts with all the skill points and all the labs. Act 10 complete by like 4 hours, 15 minutes, something like that. And I'm not a very fast player. So it's a very, very fast skill to level, especially after you get to Act 5 and get Shield Charge. It just becomes an absolute monster. So I'll be making a video about that as well, showing you guys how to level it and how to basically progress the build. This is definitely my starter, I think, because it's so versatile, it can do anything. What else do we have? Unique item balance. March of the Legion. Nice. So March of the Legion is being nerfed. They're working the March of the Legion so they can only have now 1 blessing instead of like spamming 4 blessings, making it cost mana instead of temporarily reserving it. So a bunch of changes that are basically reworking some problematic mechanics, and they're releasing also a blessing as a support gem so that you can cast these auras as blessing without having to use this unique item. So unique item as an option, and then the support gem. I think this is a good change. March of the Legion was just extremely abusive, so that's really cool. Mortal Conviction removed from behind the blood magic and make something similar to that as a support gem that makes an aura free and prevents you reserving mana. It will be mutually exclusive with blessing skills, so you won't be able to use both simultaneously. This support gem provides slightly less aura effect to the skill than the blessing support, but has no cost or upkeep involved. That's pretty cool. Those are, I think, pretty good changes, making the mechanics that existed still exist. So if you like using it for some reason, it fits your build, you can still use that, but you cannot abuse it to the degree that you could before. What else do we have here? We've got the Shade form. Oh yeah, the Shroud of the Lightless and Replica Eternity Shroud. You got the Shade form, which made you immune to physical damage. This was possible to extend the duration of it longer than the cooldown, and that meant you could keep it permanently up, and then you could do I think it's Bone Shatter, right, when you could get like trauma stacks. So you were supposed to take self damage while increasing your damage, but you could mitigate the self damage completely and just scale your damage infinitely. So people were doing just hundreds of millions of damage, just having, you know, like 100 attacks per second, just some absolutely insane shit with abusing this. So now basically the cooldown happens after the skill ends. It has roughly 5-second duration or 4-second duration, I think. So if you were not abusing this, it is basically unchanged. But if you were using this, then it's basically removed. You're now gonna have that 40-second downtime no matter what you do, right? No matter how much you extend the duration, you're gonna have the 40-second downtime. So the gimmick will still exist to use it one time, like for one cast, one duration. But beyond that, you're just gonna have 40 seconds of downtime where you're gonna just die. What else do we have? Strength of Blood Keystone from Lethal Applied Unique Jewel scaled with modifiers to life recovery rate, allowing you to reach... Oh yeah, the immunity to damage. It incorrectly scaled with modifiers to life recovery rate. Huh. I wonder what was the bug. I thought this was like just something that existed, but I didn't know that it was like actually incorrectly scaling. But yeah, this immunity build and this immunity build are just removed from the game. Obviously, we knew that was coming. What else do we have here? Dancing Dervish. Oh, they're making it so that you can use it on single target, I guess. That's cool. What else do we have here? Void Fletcher nerf. So they're still reviewing what to do about it, but Void Fletcher is going to be nerfed. I think that's very deserved. It's so silly that you can just have zero investment, and like all the MF builds were running Void Fletcher because it was just outclassing everything else because they weren't scaling their damage that high. So Void Fletcher was better than like having crit multi or dot multi or whatever. So I think this is a very deserved nerf. Probably some kind of a rework would be necessary. Like make it interesting, not just like, oh, we get extra thing that shoots stuff and does more damage than everything else you're doing on your character. Overall, this balanced manifesto is fucking awesome. This is exactly what I would like to see. Like, if I was gonna just like guess like the best case scenario of what could happen, that's what I would do. Just like buff the underperforming things, nerf the overpowered skills, don't completely kill the skills. This is actually GGG, I think, deserves a lot of praise for these patch notes, because this is these are the best patch notes in a really long time, because there are no like crazy stupid mistakes in balancing that they do sometimes, where they nerf something to the ground on 7 different levels and it's absolutely unplayable. Instead, what they're doing is, like, for example, if you look at Seismic Trap, right? This seems like the skill is not destroyed. It seems like it's still gonna be fine, just a little bit less damage, but you get some area, you know, so it's not too bad. Toxic Rain as well, like this amount of damage, like 20% or a bit less than 20% nerf to damage, that's totally justified. That's exactly what the skill needed. It was a little bit too powerful without much investment, and compared to like other bow skills, and because they're buffing the underperforming bow skills by a bunch of gear changes that is going to be easier accessible to players, that's really, really good. They're also making, like, solving a little bit of the issue with the influenced items. Like, for example, +1 arrows is now going to be on non-influenced quivers, so it's going to be easier for you as a player to just make your character decent, right? It's not going to be easier to make it super insanely powerful, but it's going to be easier to make it decent, which is, I think, a really good thing to have in the game. Like, you really don't want people to struggle to make a character playable when they're playing something that's not the meta skill, you know? Like, you're going to have like 3-4 skills every league that are going to be better than everything else, right? And that's fine. But if you're not playing those skills, you shouldn't be penalized so heavily. You should still have like a ability to make like a decent build that's gonna clear the content, and the content should not be balanced around all of these insanely powerful meta builds, right? The content should be balanced around somewhere like middle of the road builds, not the bad builds, of course, right? If you're making a bad build, you should be penalized. If you're making a bad build, your character should suck, and that's good. But if you're making, like, if you're following good principles of build making, you're making your character like decently tanking, you're managing your resources well, you're scaling the damage with the best support gems and best mechanics available to you, but you're simply playing something that's not meta, you shouldn't be penalized for that, right? And this is something that they're resolving. They're slowly evening out the difference between the weaker builds and the stronger builds, and that is really good for the game. That is also something that would not be possible. Like, all of these, like these changes, for example, I just want to point that out. These changes to the hit-based spellcasting would be absolutely not happening. Like, you would never see this shit if they didn't nerf in the league before, if they didn't nerf the support gems, right? If they didn't nerf the multipliers on so many support gems, if they didn't do that, you would never see this shit. That would never happen, because it would be impossible. Like, that would just break the game, right? But because everything is more balanced, closer together, now they can actually make smarter balance changes. And this was something, I don't know, if you are interested in game design, if you're interested in game balance and you actually study that shit and you think about it, you could have seen that coming a fucking half a year ago or a year ago, right? Like, that's when I was making videos talking about how GGG needs to nerf the multipliers and buff the base damages, and this is what they've been doing for the past 3 leagues, and the balance of the game is much better than it has been before. Like, the strongest builds, instead of doing like hundreds of millions of DPS, while the weakest builds are doing hundreds of thousands of DPS, instead we have like middle of the range builds that do like couple million DPS, and then we have strong builds that do like 20 million DPS, right? Or like up to 50 million DPS, right? And those are like super strong min-max builds. And that's fine. It's fine to have like a build that is like 50 times better than another build in terms of the damage. It's still insanely powerful and still can be narrowed down even more. But it's not fine to have a build that is literally like million times better than another build, right? That's kind of stupid, right? And they're getting rid of that by addressing the issue of the modifiers. They're buffing the base damages. They're making the decent builds. Like if you make a spellcaster build correctly, it's gonna be pretty good. It's gonna be able to clear everything. It's gonna have like few million DPS, and you're gonna have a good time running through the game, as opposed to just being penalized for picking something that's not meta. So I'm a big fan of these changes, huge fan of this balanced manifesto. The patch notes will clarify some things for me as well, like for example, how much of a nerf exactly is it to the Seismic Trap, but I expect that they probably playtested it a little bit and made sure that it's nerfed by a decent amount so that it's not so powerful. They see the problem, they see the issue, and they're addressing it, so that's the important part, right? That's all you can expect. Like if you are a game developer, right, or if you have a game and there is a certain meta, there are certain skills that are overperforming, and these skills are getting nerfed, and skills that are underperforming are getting buffed. That's the best thing you can ask for. It's very simple. It seems simple on paper, right? But it's because PoE is such an insanely complicated game, they had to do some setup for this, right? And that was like the big nerf patch that people were crying about because they don't understand that it's literally not possible to balance the game without doing that. And now the game is more balanced and everybody's more happy because they can play more skills. Like the meta this league was actually very diverse, which was really cool. And that would not be possible if not for the nerfs. So big fan of this. Let me know, guys, what you think about these balance changes in the comments below. I will see you next time, probably with a Poisonous Concoction build. See you next time and take care. Bye-bye.